Today on the Big 3 in 30, the Bengals trade for Dexter Lawrence.
The Cincinnati Bengals have given up their first-round pick, a top 10 pick for a superstar in Dexter Lawrence.
While the Giants get a top 10 pick in return.
That now gives the Giants 2 picks in the top 10.
And the Texans sign Will Anderson to a contract extension.
Will Anderson, 3-year extension worth $150 million.
This is the Big 3 in 30 NFL, the 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 NFL starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Bengals made a major move by trading for Dexter Lawrence to bolster their defensive front. James Rapian and Jake Liskow with Locked On Bengals go deeper on the trade.
The Cincinnati Bengals have given up their first-round pick, a top 10 pick for a superstar in Dexter Lawrence and the New York Giants. The Bengals and the Giants, no strangers when it comes to trading for defensive tackles. And now Dexter Lawrence, BJ Hill's former teammate, and presumably the subject of all of those vague tweets from BJ Hill since April 7th, is now a Cincinnati Bengal. Dexter Lawrence, come on down, the number one player on this defense on paper. Dexter Lawrence now anchoring the Cincinnati Bengals defensive line.
What a huge move, Jake. I mean, this is, I was thinking about it. I've had some text conversations about it. I think it's the biggest move, trade, whatever you want to say, the biggest trade in franchise history.
No doubt.
And this is someone who wrote a book about the Bengals, and like you could think of Kajana Carter, and that was a huge trade, but it was in the 90s, and that's the 90s. The Dan Big Daddy Wilkinson trade is huge. You get a first round pick. It's a big deal. It's first overall, former first overall pick. You do that. But that, again, 90s, disclaimer there. They didn't make any splash move like this during the Carson era or
until they traded him. Trading Carson was a pretty big trade.
Yeah, and not like this though, because that was about resetting, not winning.
Yeah.
And Andrew Whitworth has talked about this during the Andy era. And by the way, I kind of get why they didn't do it with Andy, but you have Joe Burrow. And how much have we talked about Joe Burrow? And man, he's going to be 30 in December. They've missed the playoffs 3 straight years. And there's so many layers to this. But the big one is, my God, they said, you know what? We will give up the 10th pick and we will go get this 342-pound nose tackle who's probably one of one when it comes to being a nose tackle and getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Extremely rare. Not something that you're going to find certainly on trees, but really find in many draft classes. And you go get him and you're willing to give up a major asset to do it. It's just mind-blowing, exciting, and a really wild move in the best way that I don't think any of us saw coming. Even if we talked about it, I don't think anyone really thought that this move was going to happen. And yet it has happened.
I don't know if we even talked about it. It was so out there, so out of character.
People talked about it. People talked. I don't think we did a topic on it, but people were talking about it. Yeah.
But we didn't dedicate a segment to what if BJ Hill is tweeting about Dexter Lawrence, because it was just
locked
impossible
in on the draft.
To buy.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, draft. What do the Bengals do? They stick and pick. In the episode that will not go to air, we were talking about the Bengals' proclivity to stick and pick in the first round if there's a guy that they think is in that bucket and not wanting to trade back and all those things. But instead, they just trade out of the first round altogether for Dexter Lawrence, and they get a guy who, if he's healthy, and that's going to be the disclaimer, is what's going on with that elbow. It looks pretty good in the film that I watched in the last hour. In terms of you try to block him one-on-one, he is tossing you into your quarterback and moving your quarterback off his spot. There just aren't guys that can anchor against the Dexter Lawrence pass rush. Those guys just aren't out there. And he's obviously at his size and with his ability, excellent against the run as well. The only knock would be that he doesn't necessarily finish sacks as you would like to see him finish some plays and sometimes get away from him and the quarterback's able to evade him. But again, he's 340 pounds. So he's there to help move the quarterback off the spot, win one-on-ones, and create opportunities for the other guys on this Bengals defensive line. There should be a lot of one-on-ones available to the Bengals edge rushers, to Jonathan Allen, because you're going to set your protection in a huge way to Dexter Lawrence. You're going to slide to Dexter Lawrence. It gives you so many options as a defensive coordinator, as a person designing your pass rush, to say, well, if we set up this blitz, we can get a one-on-one for Dexter Lawrence. And if we don't set up this blitz and we just line up with our 4 guys, they're going to slide to Dexter Lawrence, and I'm going to get a one-on-one over here. And then I can run this stunt or game, or just let my defensive end pin his ears back and go win a one-on-one with the tackle. And those are the kinds of opportunities that it creates for you when you have this guy. And how many times have I said, James, both on and off air, I think the hardest thing to find in football outside of quarterback is a true game-changing defensive tackle. Sure. And that's what the Bengals have taken the swing to do here in sending the 10th pick for Dexter Lawrence.
They have. And just so you know, in team history, dating back to 1968, this is why I call it the biggest trade. They've never traded a top 10 pick for a player ever. Like ever. This has never been a thing. They've never done it for a quarterback. They've never done it. And that's a long time. That's a long time, closing in on 60 years. And I think that you're right. Like it's so hard to find, and they looked around and they've been on the hunt. They've been on the hunt for a defensive tackle like this. We could talk about the draft and the 10th pick in a second, but let's talk about the defensive tackle thirst. They've had it. You're not alone. Like they know it. Like if I called Zach Taylor right now and I'm like, man, what's the thing that you hate the most as an offensive play caller? He'd be like, a defensive tackle that can get after Joe. Because it sucks. Like if you have a defensive tackle that can stop the run, command double teams and make you double team him, but then also get after your quarterback and you're a pass first team, it really sucks. And Zach hates it. And they've wanted that. They've wanted some interior push. That's why they went out and got Sheldon Rankins. Whether or not that was a wise move at the time, that was their thought process behind it. They were in on Walter Nolan. We can say that now. It's been a year plus. I think they would have taken Walter Nolan 17th overall if he was there. He wasn't. There are other options. Of course, I'm not hitting on all of them, but they go get Jonathan Allen, and that doesn't that helps, but that doesn't solve the issue. We knew that. Why weren't we talking about defensive tackle? Because there just weren't any that were worthy of the 10th pick. And so they're like, oh, wait, Dexter Lawrence is available? Well, let's try to get this done. And that's usually when a guy like that becomes available. I've covered the team for a decade and a half in some form or fashion. And whether it was on a site that nobody read or sites that read, it's been a long time now. And I write those articles. I discuss those topics. I'm like, they should try this or they should do this. They did it. The thing that everybody says they never do, they did. That's what this is. And I don't know. Like, obviously, there's risk involved, and we have plenty of time to dissect it and all of those things, not just on today's show, but moving forward. But I don't know how you can't smile at the move and get excited about it, because it very much is put your chips in, and he fits really well, like you mentioned. I mean, there's a lot to like about this move because of how aggressive it is, because of the mindset, because of the fit, because of how rare a player like this is, and because of where the Bengals are at as a franchise.
There's so many topics to discuss with this trade. It's going to be unpacking more what the direction is for the defense, talking about the 10th pick and the opportunity cost here, talking about how exactly this is going to look for the next week for the Bengals, and the impact on the draft and the impact on the players on the team, the impact on guys like BJ Hill and Jonathan Allen and TJ Slayton and Chris Jenkins, and the very uphill battle at this point for McKinley Jackson to make the roster now, because they're not keeping 6 defensive tackles. Are they going to go more 3-4 and keep 3 defensive tackles on the field and rotate primarily TJ Slayton and Jonathan Allen, depending on what's going on in terms of the situation, if it's a pass down or a rundown? The other note here, James, before we continue the conversation, is the last time the Bengals didn't have a first round pick was 1989.
Wow.
The last time the Bengals did not have a first round pick because they traded out of the first round. They're picking at the back of the round. They traded out of the first round entirely in 1989. And that is the last time they didn't have a first round pick, and maybe the only time they didn't have a first round pick, because I guess I haven't gone all the way back, but going back to at least 1970, they had at least a first round pick And Greg Cook was our first round pick in 69. Bob Johnson in 68. So that's all their drafts. They've not had a first round pick once in team history in 1989.
Yeah.
And this will be the second time.
Yeah. And we'll see. You never know. But it's a good way to tee it up. What it says about how the Bengals viewed the 10th pick.
Matt Derry here from the Locked On Lions podcast. You know, life insurance is one of those things you don't really think about until you have a reason to. For me, it really hit home when my father passed away over 20 years ago. You start thinking less about yourself and more about the people who depend on you and making sure they're taken care of no matter what. That's why I like Ethos. They make getting life insurance simple. It's 100% online, no doctor visits, no needles, none of that. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in just a few minutes, and even get same-day coverage. And honestly, that's huge because life gets busy. You can get up to $3 million in coverage, and some plans are as low as just $30 a month. It's just one of those things that gives you peace of mind knowing your family is protected. Take 10 minutes to get covered today with life insurance through Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Applications may vary. Rates may vary.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed. That's according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. It's over at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support your show by saying you heard about Indeed right here. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. The Giants turned Dexter Lawrence into the number 10 overall pick and added more flexibility for draft night this week. Patricia Traina with Locked On Giants has more.
The New York Giants and Dexter Lawrence, after there being a glimmer of hope as of Friday that maybe they would get on the same page, it just didn't happen. Dexter Lawrence has been traded to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Giants getting the first pick of the Bengals this year, pick number 10 overall. So that now gives the Giants 2 picks in the top 10 and 3 picks overall in the top 100. So it was a straight up player for 1 pick trade. Dexter Lawrence no longer a Giant. So on today's program, we're going to take a look at that. We're going to look at the return. We're going to look at the fallout. We're going to look at every angle of this story. So glad to have you with us here on Locked On Giants. All right. So how did we get here? At last check, the Giants had made an offer to Dexter Lawrence to increase his salary. However, it was nowhere near the APY that he was looking for. And I believe the APY I had read that he was looking for was somewhere upwards around 28 or 29 million. The Giants all along have been reluctant to give Dexter Lawrence that kind of money. He's coming off of a down year, although I have some stats that would kind of dispute the fact that he had a down year, which I'll get to in a moment. He's I think 28 years old. He's had a lot of mileage on his legs. The Giants just did not want to, give him that big of a raise. They were willing to give him a raise, but not a huge raise. All right. So Dexter, he wanted more, wasn't getting it. He had enough. He also reportedly was frustrated with how, former teammates have walked out the door and gone on to have success, both in terms of winning, both in terms and paydays. And Dexter just had it up and over. And it is a big, big loss for the locker room, because you can bet that other guys in that locker room are watching this and they're saying to themselves, what are we doing here? We're giving away our best player. We're trading him away. What are we doing here if we're trying to win? Okay, so I mentioned Dexter's down year. The Giants supposedly using that as an excuse not to give Dexter the contract that he was looking for. Now, yes, Dexter had a career low in terms of sacks and in terms of tackles. That much is true. But I went a little deeper and digging into the stats. According to True Media, Dexter Lawrence again and the run defense. Okay. So last year, Dexter Lawrence was on the field for the Giants in all 17 games, even with that bum elbow that he had. When he was on the field for the Giants, opponents rushed for average of 5.1 yards per carry. When Dexter was off the field, 5.7 yards per carry. Opponents had a success rate of 52.5% running the ball when Dexter was on the field, and 57.5% when he was off the field. Yards before contact, opponents averaged 1.68 yards before contact with Dexter on the field, and 2.43 yards before contact when he was off the field. Now, looking at those numbers a little deeper, not that big of a difference. The only real big difference is the yards before contact. So I got to wonder if the Giants took a look at that and said, hey, our run defense wasn't so hot with you in here, and, paying you extra money doesn't mean that it's going to be as, better. I don't know. Maybe that was their approach. But what I do know is this. John Harbaugh, when he was hired, said that he wants guys who want to be here, who want to be a Giant. He said, if you want to be a Giant, you work for it, you're going to be here. If you don't want to be a Giant, we'll send you elsewhere. Dexter Lawrence apparently did not want to be a Giant. All right. He had it up and over, and he got his wish. He's going to Cincinnati in return, like I said, for the 10th overall pick in this draft. All right. Now, did the Giants get good value for Dexter Lawrence? Because basically just that one pick. All right. Not a package of picks. Depends on who you ask. There are some who have felt that Dexter just wasn't the same player who would have, a couple years ago might have brought in multiple first-round picks. There are some who think the Giants got a really good deal, and some who think that, the Bengals are crazy for what they gave up. But all along, while I was hoping that this deal would get done, that the Giants and Dexter would kiss and make up and, continue onward, the fact that the Giants were able to get an extra pick in the first round, I can't hate that. I really can't. Look, Dexter had 2 more years left on his contract. And if we're talking about value, who won this trade? And obviously, we got to see what the Giants do with the pick. But here's the thing. The Giants are going to get 2 first-round picks now. Their own at number 5 and the Bengals at number 10. The Bengals are getting Dexter Lawrence, plus they now don't have a first-round pick, and they have to give Dexter Lawrence a raise. So initially, you could say that the Giants won this particular trade. All right. Now, the problem, obviously, the Giants now have a big hole in the middle of their defense. So, what are they going to do? Well, we'll talk about that a little later on in the program. The last thing I want to mention just real quick before we take our first break is that, Dexter Lawrence, going back to last year, people have asked me, what was going on with him. I thought Dexter Lawrence, his personality took a darker turn, if you will. He just wasn't the jovial, happy-go-lucky guy that he had been earlier in his career. And it was clear that the losing was starting to get to him. It was also clear that the frustrations of seeing guys like Xavier McKinney and Leonard Williams and Julian Love and Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones leave the organization and flourish elsewhere, that was starting to get to Dexter, who, as I mentioned, is getting up there in age. He wants to win. He felt that he wasn't going to be able to win with the Giants. Now, maybe he thought, you would think that with John Harbaugh coming in and his track record, you would think, okay, at least give the man the benefit of the doubt. Dexter wasn't willing to do that. So he is now an ex-Giant.
Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it's messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelt Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number so you never miss a call, text, or opportunity. Everything lives in one clean thread. Calls, texts, voicemails. The whole team sees the conversation, so nothing falls through the cracks. It just makes your business feel more organized and responsive. Make this the season no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnba. That's quo.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. The Texans locked up Will Anderson Jr. with a massive extension to keep one of their top defenders in Houston. John Hickman with Locked On Texans explains what it means.
Will Anderson, 3-year extension worth $150 million. He is getting $50 million APY. And the best part of this deal, because Houston picked up that 5th-year option, he's under contract this year. He's under contract next year. He's under contract the following year, the year after that, and the year after that. Will Anderson is now under contract for the Houston Texans for the next 5 seasons. I think we should all rejoice, right? We should all rejoice because for the next 5 years, Will Anderson Jr. will be wreaking havoc. For the next 5 years, whether it's the AFC South, the AFC, or whenever the Texans take on NFC opponents, Will Anderson Jr. will treat the rest of the NFL like he's Grand Regent Thrag, and everybody else around him is just Oliver Grayson. Super excited for the young man. Very deserving. He's a player that I think box office. He is box office. And what I like the most about Will Anderson Jr., whatever he does in the regular season is translated over to the postseason. He has had personally, maybe not the team, as the Houston Texans have not made it to the AFC Championship game in their franchise history, but since entering the league in 2023, he has been one of the better edge defenders in the NFL when it comes to postseason numbers. And the beauty of that is, you got to take my word for it. You can go look at the numbers, and the numbers support the argument when I bring this up. He entered the league, Will Anderson Jr. entered the league in 2023. If we're looking at NFL sack leaders for acting 11, that legendary 2011 draft class at 10.5. Nick Bosa, 10. He entered the league in 2019, right before COVID, so he's been in the league for a while. Coming in at number 3 in just 3 seasons, you have Will Anderson Jr. Postseason, 8 sacks in the postseason, 17 total tackles, 3 forced fumbles in the postseason, all of which in 2025. Regular season, 30 sacks, 46 tackles for loss. Will does everything. He's box office. He's putting butts in the seats, right? And for Houston to get him on the right after the extension, that speaks to how Nick Caserio is operating right now. They obviously want to keep this competitive championship window open. But for the player in itself, what more can you ask for from Will Anderson Jr.? Stops to run, right? And a lot of people think I have a beef for Michael Parsons. I do not. I do know that, and a lot of this is due to playing in Dallas, but I do know that Micah Parsons only has 1 sack in the postseason. And he's played in multiple postseason games, right? Will Anderson got that 1 sack out the way in his rookie year. Not comparing the two. I'm not trying to create a competition, but what I am saying is when you look at what translates over in terms of success, boom. Okay, you pay those guys to get sacks. You also pay defenders to be run stoppers. Teams can't game plan around running at Will Anderson Jr. Teams can't game plan around isolating him from the run game. That's not what's going to happen. And he also a ton of pressures. In a lot of ways, outside of Myles Garrett, based on the last 2 seasons, but really the last season in 2025, in a lot of ways, he is widely considered by a lot of people here in Houston and around the league, especially this past year, as the perfect edge defender. He does it all, and he does it all at a high level, while only playing in 66% of the snaps on the defense. This is a player that does it all. And in my opinion, $150 million is right on brand. Now, I've told you guys a while back, I said, hey, listen, we know how Nick Caserio operates with these extensions, right? Remember these conversations? I brought up Nico Collins. I brought up Jalen Petrie. But really, the best one to bring up and reference, Derek Stingley Jr., 3-year deal at the time, made him the highest paid cornerback in the NFL because of the 3-year window and not the 4-year window of these contracts, right? So kudos to Will Anderson. And you know why it's like when we talk about the player on the field and the player off the field, you know why it's easy to pay Will Anderson Jr. the $50 million. He is box office, right? He's box office number one. The last 2 seasons, we've seen him combined get over 20 sacks. The last 2 seasons, you will see him get nearly 50 tackles for loss, right? The last 2 seasons, he is number 1 or top 3 in the league at pressures created from a defender. He's box office. He is box office. Okay. He shows up when it matters. 3.5 sacks against the Patriots this past postseason, 4 total in the playoffs, okay? He shows up off the field. And we say that a lot, and sometimes there isn't anything to necessarily reference, right? He's a guy off the field. Okay, let's look at some of the things that he's done. He's never in the news for anything bad, right? Charity work, what he does when he gets off the field, we're working with offensive linemen and things of that nature, how to get them better and working with other defenders on the defensive side of the ball. Like he does all of that. But here's what I want to point out. I'm sure there was some internal conversations from Caserio in the front office, and hey, like they probably went like this. Hey, I know you want to get paid after next season. I know you want to go ahead and kick in that extension, get that money next year, right? And obviously you deserve it. But we need you to do us a favor. All right, what is that? We need for you to be understanding about the fact that we're about to pick up this 5th-year option so we can still play and be in this competitive window for another offseason. And we'll probably say, let's do whatever it takes to win it. And obviously I don't know how the conversations went, but I do know from Will, who has the smile of a person that you can't wait to see when that mask comes off, when the camera's in front of him. He takes you through every detail. If you have a question, hey, Will, can you take us through this play in the 3rd quarter at the 4-minute mark? What happened here to allow a big play? Or what did you see to allow for you to make the play? He's going to take you through everything in those moments, and he's going to explain it. But I'm willing to bet my last that during their contract negotiations for the 5th-year option, for the contract extension, the 5th-year option came up. Hey, Will, we know that you want to get paid next year, but if we get you on a discount for next year, that's going to allow us to still make additions and redo our roster in case we need to fill holes and voids. And I'm sure Will was like, let's do it. Let's do it. My only thing, and this is probably from Will, the only thing that I want is a no trade clause, because for Will, he wants to be in Houston. I think he really does want to be in Houston. I think he wants to win it for the city. I think he wants to win it for the people. I think he wants to win it for the franchise and himself. but I think he really wants to win it for DeMeco Ryans. Right. So kudos again to Will Anderson Jr. He is set for life. I mean, he was already set for life coming into this season, right? you get the 50th option for next year. That money, you're set for life. But now he's really set for life. But it isn't about the money. It's about the man behind the mask and the player in front of his peers. DeMeco traded up for that guy in 2023 because he knew, and he just said it recently, the best top 30 visit he's had. He knew he was going to be a difference maker and a franchise changer. That's exactly what Will Anderson Jr. has been.
That's all for today's Big 3 in 30 NFL. If you follow basketball or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and on campus going up every week just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA or the Big 3 in 30 college wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 in 30 NFL.